If you feel any sort of pull to try something, try it. This painting that I'm working on, the still life that we were talking about, I have been so scared to do it for so many reasons. And to simplify the quote, it's if you're scared, do it scared. Just put your, pencil to paper and just try.
Welcome to the Origins of Creativity podcast, brought to you by BooklingMedia, where we discover the magic behind creativity through the stories of passionate creators. Listen in and fill your creative vessel with delightful insights and uplifting tales. Our guest today is a self-taught watercolor artist whose journey began in 2021 while living in the remote Australian Outback. Today, her work is inspired by landscapes she's called home in Colorado, Australia, and California. Using a distinctive minimal water technique, she creates modern and vibrant botanical paintings rooted in close observation and detail. Welcome to the show, Emma Speelman.
Hello.
I'm so excited to have you here. Your artwork is beautiful, and I can't wait to learn more about what's got you inspired and your journey and all the fun things that you've been through on your journey. So I want to jump right in because to explain to our audience, since this is audio only, the watercolors that you've really been focusing on has been these beautiful, like realistic looking flowers and fruits and, of course, botanical themes. And in our image on the podcast description, it's got an example of a rose, and it's just really beautiful. And in the intro, we mentioned your technique. So I want to also dive into that, the minimal water technique. But to begin, what about watercolors is it that got you to say, I'm going to really focus on this medium?
It's kind of silly, actually. It was first and foremost because of the cleanup time. So I was doing oils and acrylics and things. And this was, like you said in the beginning, I was living in the Australian Outback with my husband. I was there for 4 years. And it was hard to get materials because we just didn't have like an art store. Like our art store was a hardware store and you couldn't get anything. So I started talking and saying, I think it might just be easy to try watercolor. And I always thought it was so beautiful how loose and fluid it was. And my husband had a work trip back down. He went to Perth, where we lived originally, but he picked me up a set of like these school style watercolors from like it's Office Works, like the Office Max of Australia. And he brought it up with some cheap paper and was like, well, let's see if like you're interested, give it a shot. And no harm done. Like I said, cleaning up is easy. Everything, it's less stressful. There's not a lot of science to it, like oils. And just from there, it just took off.
So you guys were down there for work, right? Or he was?
Yeah. So my husband is Australian. So I moved over there to be with him. And we lived in Perth for a year. And then he started doing a job up to a small town called Tom Price. It's 16 hours north of Perth, like deep in the Outback. And so we started flying in and flying out. So back to Perth, back to Tom Price. And I was like, I moved here for you, not really Perth. And so we moved up to Tom Price and lived there for 4 years.
That is amazing. So, I mean, that's, not everyone, of course, in the U.S. has that experience. But in general, just that visual difference than what is typical, I guess, for most people. And I think that's a really cool direction and space to kind of play. So you got into, watercolor, and then you thought, okay, I'm good at this. I'm going to keep playing with this. And then when did you get better supplies? I mean, you're not working on school supplies anymore. So, or office supplies.
Yeah, I think I got probably like 3 or 4 paintings in. And it really didn't take me long until I was like, okay, this paper is getting chewed up and I can't achieve what I want to achieve. And it was more frustrating than it was fun. And I was like, okay, time for the next thing. I think my first like more professional purchase was my brushes. I upgraded to Polina Bright brushes. I saw her on Instagram and was following her and was like, I like her style. I'll try those brushes. And then that was like, oh, that made a difference. And then I was like, maybe the paints would make a difference. Then the paints were an incredible upgrade too. I went to a big 48 half pan set and all the colors. And I was like, oh, this is different. And then finally the paper was the biggest like change of the game for me.
It's really funny, as an artist myself, art, doesn't pay super well always. And supplies are often super expensive. And so I see a lot of people who will like not try something expensive because they're just going to fight through what they have. And it is amazing if you just try it and invest in that, because it's sometimes a matter of, I'm not very good, to, wow, I'm actually better than I thought. And, just that material difference is, it is life changing. And we have so many resources now, like Instagram and YouTube and places to see all these different supplies. So that is really cool. So when you were there, were you a full-time artist, or you were just playing around? How did that evolve for you as, being an artist online and having that as like some, this profession?
Sure. Yeah. No, so I wasn't doing it full time to begin with. It was definitely just a hobby and something to do because there was nothing to do. But I worked at the local daycare actually as the admin assistant, and I was just meeting people. And so I had a decent amount of time, like when I wasn't working, to just focus on painting. And I just randomly decided to start my Instagram, and it just became an organic growth thing after posting a few videos, and it just kind of, yeah, happened organically, really.
When did you start your Instagram account?
2021, mid 2021. So it was like the exact same time that I started learning watercolor. I started posting at the same time, just really for myself to like see the progress. Yeah.
So when you were doing, working at the daycare, were the kids an inspiration at all in how they were using art and, supplies and things like that?
Yeah, actually, they were always doing art, and oh my gosh, they were so cute. I miss them. But there was once I started like using the inspiration from them, and I started painting and talking with like the administration and stuff there, they actually had me teach the kids an art class, and I taught them how to like paint like some avocados. And I learned I'm not a great teacher, but I had a lot of fun.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's so cool. Yeah, because the way kids work is just so fun, and it's kind of inspiring to feel like I'll just work with it, and so because of Australia, I can't imagine a more beautiful place. When especially as like the Outback part. So I'm assuming all of the botanical subject matter was just kind of a natural step, and this is what I'm going to work with.
Yeah. Well, it's actually interesting. So like the botanicals definitely helped, and with like of nature in Australia and around me. But what actually got me into florals was me and my husband were planning our wedding, and I was looking at a lot of vendors, and we were getting to the point where we were choosing like our florist, and I loved their Instagram and one of their photos of the flower, and I painted that, and then just went from there. Yeah. And then Australia and the landscapes helped.
So on your website, you have other spots where you have and probably continue to paint wedding bouquets. And I thought that was a really kind of sweet and special gift that, choice for people to have instead of, of course, their flowers are going to die after the wedding. But to have that painted it's a really nice and fun idea. I think that's really cool. Is that when it was your wedding, or what kind of sparked that choice?
Yeah, exactly. So I wanted to, I always had like the goal that I wanted to paint my own bouquet, because I love, like people do the resin, but they have to send their flowers immediately. And I was like, I am going to be like, I don't know where I'm getting married. We were getting married during COVID. We ended up eloping. It was the whole thing. And I was like, okay, I know I'll be able to work from a photo. I love photo references. So I asked my photographer at the time, like, hey, can you make sure to get a good photo of my bouquet so I can paint it? And it worked out. And then organically, grew from there, painting other people's bouquets. Yeah.
I love that. That's a really unique way of preserving that memory, and for you to have that, like, wow, this is, I think that's really fun to have that together. And so tell me a little bit about when you were like a kid, and how did art and, creativity play into that at all? Since you kind of, were playing with the watercolors later, you mentioned oil. How was that experience in your life?
It's always been there. We were encouraged, my sisters and I were always encouraged to explore art through my parents. So my mom was actually like a musical theater major, and my dad was like a great illustrator and drawer, and they dedicated a whole like cabinet that was like child level, just full of art supplies. So whenever we wanted to grab and create, we were encouraged to be messy. And my mom like got us into painting with like painting rocks and painting on paper plates and being just really like everything is accessible. And I always was very into drawing and creating. And my sisters actually are incredible, like artistic as well. My older sister is an incredible singer. My little sister like crochets and does crafts. So it like trickled out in so many ways. Yeah.
That's really neat. And so, your biography says self-taught. And I find that interesting because it seems like it's just been a lifetime of, building upon what your family has provided. And I think that's something that people need to realize, that it's not like how you've learned, it's not how you learn, but what you're doing with it and like the dedication. And so what does being self-taught mean to you?
Yeah. So I would say I'm self-taught as far as it goes with watercolors. I did take every elective and every class I could based on art. So I have an incredible background of teachers who have guided me and given me the skill set. But watercolor was fully through YouTube and trial and error.
I mean, I think it sounds like what you just said, so that it's picking it up everywhere. And I think, like we talked about a minute ago, having the resources on YouTube, Instagram, everything is just, it's available at our fingertips to just pick it up if we, want to learn and to experiment. I mean, isn't that, even if you had a class, which you did, but like you have to experiment in that class, and it's, one class isn't going to make it an amazing, like boom, I'm ready now. Like, you have to experiment. And so that seems to have made your artwork in the botanical watercolor space really saturated. Like it's very bright and very precise. And, in the bio, this minimal water technique. Could you tell me a little bit more about how that is making things look the way they do with your art?
Sure. So I think when people think of watercolor in like the broad sense, it's the really loose fluid, just water is the medium, it's the control. Um, and so when I first started learning, I realized I did not like being out of control in that way. I didn't like the water being the thing that led me. I was like, okay, I got to get a grip on this because I feel really crazy right now. And it wasn't until I actually started using way less water that's like recommended on YouTube or in tutorials that I really found like that I could get the vibrancy that I want. I could get the control that I want. I love letting my watercolors like in the pans that I mix actually dry down and become more of like a pigment again. And then I can pick it up and make the finer details. But the less water for me, like the better my paintings become.
Yeah, I mean, I love watercolor in all forms, but I just like that, personally, I like it almost reminds me of the anatomical illustrations that you see or in books about, botanical
The
history,
sciences and stuff.
yeah, the sciences. And it's just it's very, very nice. And, for those who aren't necessarily in the watercolor weeds here, to have that thicker, I guess it sounds like, or less wet. And I haven't played with them yet, but the gouaches. And I don't know if you've played with gouache and how in the weeds, how that is different, or, you preferred the other verse. I don't know how that is for you, or if you've tried it.
I haven't tried gouache apart from white. I use the pure white gouache for very limited like highlights because with watercolor, of course, like you can only scrub away so much before you're like, yeah, the paper is stained. Like,
That's as white as it gets.
yeah, it's not coming up. So I've never tried gouache. I love the look of them. Like, I think the art style, whenever I think it's so cool.
That's what I was thinking too. I haven't used it. And for those who, aren't familiar with that, I guess watercolors are the more wet, and then gouache is like this in between, like more solid.
Yeah, like transparent versus opaque. Yeah.
Yeah, the opaque version is the more gouache. And then, you would switch out to something else like acrylic and then oils and all that. But yeah, I just was wondering because it kind of reminded me of that more opaque feel. And it's just so beautiful. And, when, it's really neat to see that you've used and experimented with the watercolors to create your own, style, which is, fun for everybody to like find that and you found success with that, which is really cool.
Yeah. I stumbled upon that style, I think, for sure as well. When I first started painting the botanicals and the flowers and those things, it was actually like, I said to my mom, I remember at the beginning of my journey being like, this isn't actually the art I would hang around my house. Like, I, I was kind of, shocked. Now it is like, now I love it. It's everywhere. But, yeah, I was trying to replicate so many other people's styles that I didn't really realize that I made my own until I was like there and was like, oh, okay, that's me, I guess.
I mean, I think that's important because as we learn to kind of study other people and kind of work with what they're doing to then branch out, it's absolutely, I think that's like you said, when you find you're like, oh, this is me, this is what I like to do. And do you like to do you spread out at this point still with other subject matter, or do you stick with botanicals mostly?
Um, I've actually recently started a new painting that is not botanical at all. So I definitely have found myself in that like box that I put myself in of just I do botanicals. And it wasn't like it was this new year coming up and everything. And I was like, I hate to say it, but I kind of want a break from the botanicals. And it's so weird, but like the pressure of like Instagram as well, where you're like, well, I know that's what my audience wants. Are they going to be ready for something different? It was kind of like I had to self-talk my way through and being like, that's not what art is. Like, you have to keep just pushing the boundaries, pushing yourself. And so now I'm actually working on my biggest piece that I've done. And it's a really cool old cabinet full of these pigments that are churned by an old windmill in Holland that I went to this windmill in September. And the cabinet is this rainbow of pigments that they still are making there. It's the oldest producing windmill in the world. And it just blew me away. And I was like, that's what I want to do. That's what I want to paint.
Wow. That's really fun. So what other, sure there's so many things there. I mean, I'm just imagining the tulips and, did you go at that point in time to see all of that?
No, we didn't hit it
Oh,
for that time. I know. But my in-laws, and they're actually from Amsterdam. They're originally from Holland. So I'm sure at some point we will go for that season.
it's really cool to see that, the different perspectives that you've been able to gather and landscapes that you can kind of work from. And this sounds such like a different, obviously it's more of a still life. It sounds like, like this, and just the colors seem to have inspired you in that way. And I love that. So what do you think? I mean, this is more of a deeper question, but as you switch to, different things and we'll come back to the Instagram portion too. I have a question about that. But why do you think humans feel the need to, recreate nature or what they find beautiful?
I think it's the need to slow down and pause when everything is busy. Like having a phone and having access to every piece of information that you could ever have and need and not want. It's all at your fingertips. And I think to recreate a moment in time and nature and something that makes you pause is really impactful, I think. And, with today that there's AI and art is from AI now, and it's a whole topic there, but to have a human touch of seeing something that is not around forever. It will not last for a season. It'll be gone in a few weeks or however long. But I think just to capture a moment in time that won't be around forever is really important.
Yeah, I think that so many of us, I think, appreciate that in real human art to say that they paused, they took that time to not only admire that beauty, but then to take the time to learn, put it down on paper and share it. And I think those who appreciate it can, take that time then to kind of reflect on what they like and what they're seeing, especially if they haven't seen that before. So that kind of that AI topic, I just want to touch on it. I think at some point, I don't know, do you feel like it'll swing the other way, that people will want to see more human maybe they're already there, like they want to see more human created things and appreciate it. I don't know what you think.
I think so. I mean, anytime I share my art, even in person, even like the past few months, everything, I get those comments a lot where it's just amazed and happy that like, you made this? Oh my gosh, this is amazing. Like it creates a different connection. And yeah, I think people are tired of the like immediateness of AI and that there's no human behind it. There's no emotion behind it. And yeah, I think people are really reaching out for that human connection right now.
Yeah, I think that's so true. And I think that, a reminder to the artists listening and, artists out in the world that, just keep do what you're doing. I think it'll swing that way where, people aren't really interested and they want to see what, humans create. But when you're talking about Instagram, do you feel that that's kind of like your main, I don't want to say job, but like the focus where, you're getting the feedback, you're getting that interaction, and you're getting, possible jobs? Like, how is Instagram, how does that work in your world?
Yeah, I would say yes and no. So Instagram, I have to remind myself a lot of the time that it isn't my job because it feels so heavy that I'm like, oh my gosh, I haven't posted in a week. What are they going to think? Like the algorithm's going to sway out of my direction. It's going to be a whole thing. And my best friend is also a creator. She's on Instagram as well, and we have to talk to each other and say like, hey, like you're actually an artist out in the world, not just on Instagram. And algorithms aren't like you're not working for the algorithm. And um also I have been selling my art and things a lot at different like art markets and makers markets, and that has really shifted my mindset of, oh yeah, I Instagram isn't my job. This is like connecting with people, sharing my art in a physical sense rather than a digital world has been actually so good for my mental health.
I can definitely see that. So many people who want to have this big audience, but then, like you're saying, it seems like there's that pressure of sticking with things and producing where it's not a great environment to produce art. You can't just.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there'll be times where maybe like, I get in like a rut where I don't want to paint and I'm like, okay, but will I have something to put onto like my socials and stuff? And then that actually makes it feel really like toxic and not enjoyable anymore. And it hasn't been the easiest transition, but I've been really working on stepping away from that pressure.
Right. And like you said, talking to people in person is definitely different. They're face to face, you're seeing their excitement, I'm guessing, and it's not just, words or hearts.
Yeah, it makes the likes on Instagram feel like cool. That's cool, but it's not as gratifying as when you meet someone in person and they talk about a piece that reminds them of, oh my gosh, my dad used to plant these flowers and that reminds me of him. And you get an actual connection and a bond with people, and then it is just so much more fulfilling.
Wow. Yeah, I can imagine that, for artists everywhere to have, it's a tool. Instagram is great for, getting things seen and connections, but, at the end of the day, it's in person kind of, reactions to our art. And I think that's really cool. But, there's something that, you have had, which is really cool. Tell me about Vogue a little bit. Tell me about what this is.
Yeah, so I was approached by British Vogue to be a part of their artist gallery for I have it next to me. December, January, and February. So December 24 through to February 2025. And when I got the email and they said, we've seen your work, we're really like impressed. We think you'd be a great addition to this gallery. I like could not believe it. First of all, thought it was spam, thought it was a joke. Of course, like I'm like, what do you mean Condé Nast is like emailing me? And it was a huge milestone to reach. I didn't even have it like in my things to do that I ever thought I would be able to achieve. And yeah, now to have like my work printed in a Vogue magazine is very cool. I'll never forget that.
Which pieces, what pieces were put in? describe, if you could describe them. Yeah.
Yeah, let me pull them out and remember what they were. So my first one, I believe, was what I call sunset pansy. And that is, oh no, my first one, actually, I apologize, was this purple iris that I did. And I wanted that to be the first piece because it reminded me of Van Gogh and when I was painting it. And I just thought, what a cool, ode to the greats. And it's a little piece of him, a little piece of me. And it's just this really gorgeous royal purple iris that was in the harshest direct sunlight I could have ever done. So the painting itself was really intense. And it was the piece at that time where I was like, oh, I know how to do this now. I can paint. So I thought that would be a great choice. The other ones were, apologies. Yeah, then I did my sunset pansy, which was, I don't think that's the correct name, but it is the colors of a sunset. And it's vibrant, like fuchsias and yellows and oranges. And it's just a standalone, like all my pieces, I don't have any backgrounds. They're all just the focus of the flower. And that one is just a face on gorgeous little pansy in the colors of a sunset. And she makes me incredibly happy. And then my third one was, I'm getting too far ahead, was actually a bridal bouquet that I did. So it was the most detailed one. It has gorgeous eucalyptus, roses, ranunculus, and it is the more detailed of the work. So instead of it just being one singular flower, it is an entire bouquet, still no background. Just very proud of that one.
That is exciting. So does that, does that open any doors at all for you as an artist? Has anybody seen it? How's that been for you then?
Yeah, interestingly, I think it has turned out to be more of just a exciting personal thing for me. It hasn't done anything that I've really noticed, at least, which I was expecting. Maybe that's naive to say. I was hoping that there maybe would have been some turnout from it, but it was more just the honor, really, at the end of the day.
It's hard to know, it's sometimes, there's something that might kind of lead somewhere and you never know, it might still. And I think that it's, like you said, it's like that experience of, this is really cool to have this, and people all over the place are seeing it, not just, Instagram is big too, but to have it in paper, print, and it's there. I think that's really cool. And it made me think, if you ever reflect then on, your art and where you've come from, do you ever have, do you have any old artwork from as a child that you look back on and say, wow, look at, do you have any flower pictures or anything like that you've looked at lately and kind of reflected on?
I don't have any flower pictures at all, actually. When I was as a kid drawing, I was doing drawing clothes because of course I thought I wanted to be a fashion designer, because why not? And but I was actually talking about this with my sister earlier today, about some of the drawings and pictures that I did mostly. What got me really back into art, or really focused in on it, was I had a friend who passed away in high school, and to kind of understand my feelings, I went up to my room and I actually drew, there's no connection here, but I drew all of the portraits of the members of One Direction. And and then I just realized I really like realism, and I liked to focus in on my brain likes those details. And that, yeah, I was doing a lot of pencil drawings as a kid, and that was kind of guided me towards more realistic things, I think.
Yeah, it's interesting to think of fashion design, and I'm imagining flowing skirts and dresses and how it kind of almost becomes petals on the plants. And I'm wondering how that somehow in your brain it might be this connection.
Oh, I love that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool. When as you're thinking back, as you're talking to your sister, was there anything that you guys talked about that brought your minds to why you're doing what you're doing with art? Why are you continuing to do this?
I think we just realized we were raised in a very artistic home. My Even my extended family, my grandfather is one of the best piano players ever. I remember being at his house with my grandma, and he can just play a song by ear. He doesn't even need to read the notes. He can play it. My uncle's he was a drummer, and then on my dad's side, his um aunt was a painter, and it's just kind of, I think, always been there. And I just I definitely am in the family like where I've really taken it and created my career from it. And that's also just because I have an amazing husband who has encouraged me like with unwavering support to try, really. So I think it's people.
Do you think that's important, like if for this, for people to kind of blossom? I mean, would it be more challenging if they didn't have this background and support?
I think so. I don't think I'd be able to. I don't know if I would have been brave enough to actually try to give it a go, because it's very easy to talk yourself out of doing things. I could have easily been like, oh, watercolor would be cool, but no, that's something new. Don't really want to get it. Don't want to do it. Don't want to try. And having, the support and the encouragement every day, just so much encouragement from everyone in my family and my life has been a really massive part.
Yeah, I can see that being that pillar of strength to, almost allow people and you to do it. Like without that, it's kind of like, well, that's not a job. I don't know. And I think that's really cool. And then how do you feel about being a watercolor, artist? Have you ever thought about that in your world? So, what else would would you continue would you have been doing, daycare still, or how do you think about where you are now?
Um, I love it. I am very proud anytime I get asked, oh, and what do you do? Oh, I'm a watercolor artist, and I'm very proud to talk about it and share. And I think it's something that I'm really, really proud of. I do not know what I would have been doing if it wasn't this. I actually went to school for business because I had no idea what I wanted to do. And I thought, well, that's at least an umbrella of a thing that can kind of cover my bases. But I was very aimless. And even just working at the daycare was just because there wasn't anything else. There was no other job in that town, really. And that one at least was not as focused. So the town we lived in was focused. It was a mining town. So it was either you worked at the mine, you worked at the grocery store, or you worked at the daycare. There wasn't much else to do. And the daycare was fun, and I met amazing people. But no, I would not have naturally, I don't think, continued in that world.
Right. Yeah. So does this feel more, alive than, obviously it's a more passion of yours than to, you can enjoy something. But, I think for people who are, starting out that, they're working jobs that aren't where they want to be, you never know where that, it's going to turn or change. I think for people to notice that, you're not going to start out right away, having this full studio necessarily and having everything figured out, and to see, where you come and where you've gone. So where do you, you're working on different subject matter at the moment. Do you see any kind of plan or direction for where you're going?
Not really, actually. I'm kind of just taking it as it comes. I think it's a natural, progression where I'm wanting to explore outside of botanicals, but it's definitely still the focus on, like you said, still life. I think I'll always be inspired by still life. I have a album in my phone of, I call it to paint potential. So anything that I take a photo of recently where I'm add that in, because maybe next month you'll be inspired by that. It's something that I think looks cool, but I'm not too confident to paint now. So I just wait until literally the moment is okay, today's the day.
That's interesting, because I'm wondering, do you ever just think this is perfect as a photograph? Or do you feel like you just have to paint it? Some people are brilliant photographers, or whatever they've captured is great as it is. What makes you decide I'm going to paint it instead of just, hang that photo on the wall?
My initial reaction is my photos aren't that good. I can't take, I'm not great at cropping or really. I think painting is actually, I've gotten better at taking photos because I'm trying to take all of my reference photos. But there is something about turning a photo into a painting, I think, for me, makes it feel more alive than what I took the photo of. Like there's more.
It seems like a spirit to it.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, and I don't do a lot of like landscapes or focus on those kind of things. And I love the artists who do, but that's a lot of my photos are like, oh, this is a beautiful sunset, but I can't paint those.
Yeah, I can see. Yeah, it's something tangible to get. It's something like maybe like a spark that makes you go like, I have to just do this. But when you think of your audience, either in person or on Instagram, is there anything you want them to feel or take away from your work when they see it?
I hmm, I really want people, as cheesy as it is, I want them to slow down and have a minute of peace and a minute to just focus on one thing at a time. I unexpectedly have gotten more reactions of nostalgia than I expected. Been a lot in person, and that's been a great feeling to create for people, is that nostalgic feeling of something that reminds them of their childhood or a moment in time, that like a trip they took, and it's super, super like gratifying.
Right, because if they were, had a picture, I'm just imagining they had like a photo of something in the background, and it's not separate and promoted to some special place on their wall. I think that is really cool. If somebody had this one special flower, and there's things like it, but the way you're kind of like capturing that moment, and not just a photograph, but then taking that time for each little piece is definitely special, and that's really cool to have people relate to it in that way. And I love that. And then I guess this kind of ties in. What do you gain personally from creating your images?
I gain a sense of calm, and it's given me purpose, where for so long I deal with anxiety. I've had it my whole life, and I always felt really out of place and didn't really know, okay, well, my friend, he knows exactly what he wants to do, or everyone felt like they kind of had their purpose and their goal in it. My paintings have really become, yeah, just a piece of me that I feel like I can hone in on something. And if my brain is feeling really overwhelmed or exhausted with the state of the world or whatever is going on, I can just take a few hours to just get into the flow state and let myself just have a little bit of peace and quiet and time away from doom scrolling or, making anxiety worse. Like it does the best things for me.
I can see that, how that makes sense for people to want to escape, and have
Yeah,
that
yeah,
that
yeah.
that space, and then to have the reward of them seeing it and appreciating it and growing a business from it. I think that's awesome. And is there anything that, you feel like you want to share that just we haven't touched on, that you want to leave with the listeners?
I think just go for it. If you feel any sort of pull to try something, try it. This painting that I'm working on, the still life that we were talking about, I have been so scared to do it for so many reasons. And to simplify the quote, it's if you're scared, do it scared. Just put your, pencil to paper and just try. And for me, I have been, every time I start a new element of this painting, I'm like, I don't know if this is gonna work. And it's fine. It's getting there and it's working, but it's a constant, you have to push yourself to try. You have to be your own biggest cheerleader. And hopefully, I feel grateful that I have an incredible group and team around me who's just, they're probably bigger cheerleaders than I am for myself, but it's,
Isn't that how it goes?
I know, I know. But yeah, just do it scared. If you're going to do it, just do it.
I love it. That's perfect advice for everybody to just do it. I love that. Also, can you let us know where people can find you online?
Of course. So my Instagram is art by Emma Leanne. This Lian is how you spell Leanne. And my website, artbyemmaleanne.com. I sell all my prints and originals on there. And I have a YouTube as well, Art by Emma Leanne. Keep it consistent.
Wonderful. That's great. Okay. And I will put that in the show notes for people to find, and they can just link right to you. And I think to wrap up, I mean, I am excited to see where you're going to go with your, different pieces and botanical, wherever it goes. And I'm so happy that you were able to talk with us today and share some insight and some personal thoughts on everything, because it helps everybody, I think, to share where we're going and where we're coming from. So I'm so grateful you were here, and thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. This was so fun. I love talking about art. So this was really a really great way to start my morning. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. And I can't forget to thank our listeners for joining us. Thank you so much. If you enjoyed this podcast and found it valuable, please share it with others so we can reach people who might like a bit of inspiration on their own creative journey. I'm Becky Gehrisch, and until next time, happy creating. Hey there, creative minds. Are you ready for the next burst of inspiration? Make sure to subscribe to the Origins of Creativity podcast in your favorite podcast app for all our latest episodes. Visit BooklingMedia.com/podcast for show details, links to connect with us, and so much more. This has been the Origins of Creativity podcast, where inspiration meets imagination.